My daughter-in-law and her friend call me an ugly bum and laugh at how I got free money. But now I'm having the last laugh as I watch their lives fall apart, and I'm not going to help them. Well, you don't make it to 67 without having a few stories to tell. I've been through enough to know when to walk away, when to stand firm, and when to let things slide. That's the wisdom that age and experience give you. I'm a retired military man. After serving my country for decades, I retired and thought I'd have a quiet life. But retiring doesn't mean sitting around all day doing nothing. I like to stay active, so I spent my post-military life coaching kids in baseball at a local club. Teaching those kids gives me a purpose. I like seeing them develop their skills, and I feel like, in a way, I'm giving something back to the community. Now I'm single. My wife passed away 4 years ago because of COVID. I have a son who's married, and they recently had a baby. I was thrilled to see my granddaughter. I always wanted a daughter, but we only had one son. We couldn't conceive after him. So when my son and daughter-in-law came to me asking for help a little over 8 months ago, I didn't hesitate to lend a hand. My granddaughter was born, and like many young couples, they were drowning financially. They both have full-time jobs, which is fine, but they struggle to find affordable childcare. We all know daycare is very expensive nowadays, and hiring a nanny was even more out of their reach. So after my daughter-in-law's maternity leave ended, I offered to take care of my granddaughter. Why not? I have the time, and I love the little girl. Plus, it gave me the chance to bond with her, something I wasn't always able to do when my son was little, because I was almost always deployed. For the past 8 months, I've been doing just that, caring for my granddaughter during the day while my son and daughter-in-law go to work. I didn't ask for anything in return, no money or favors, just the satisfaction of knowing I was helping my family. After my morning class, I go to their house, and by then, my daughter-in-law is ready to leave for work. I spend the day with the baby, keeping her busy with activities, taking her for walks, playing with her, changing diapers, everything. At the end of the day, I stay at their house until my son and daughter-in-law return from work, just to make sure everything is in order before I go back to my own home. It's not an easy job, but it's not unbearable either. I love my granddaughter, and that's enough. However, there's something about my daughter-in-law that makes me uneasy. She hasn't been rude to me directly, but there's always tension in the air, a coldness in her attitude. At first, I couldn't pinpoint what it was, but now I think it has to do with my physique and appearance. I've served my country and taken bullets. I have a bullet scar on my right ear and a hardened, weathered face, which may not be pleasant for my daughter-in-law. The coldness was bearable, but over the past 2 or 3 months, there's been something else. My daughter-in-law has a friend named Bonnie, who often comes over in the afternoons and sometimes arrives with my daughter-in-law when she comes home from work. Normally, I play with my granddaughter in the front yard in the afternoon. When my daughter-in-law arrives, she freshens up and picks up the baby from the yard, and then I leave. On days when Bonnie comes over, my daughter-in-law doesn't come out. She spends time with her friend and doesn't tend to the baby, so I stay longer to give her time with her friend. Now, I don't know Bonnie very well, but from the first day I met her, I didn't like her. I'm not one to judge people too quickly, but there's something about her that doesn't sit right with me. Maybe it's the way she carries herself. There's an air of arrogance about her, as if she thinks she's better than everyone else in the room. Maybe it's me being old-fashioned, but I think you can learn a lot about a person by how they treat others. Well, she treated me like I was invisible. Every time Bonnie is at the house, she and my daughter-in-law sit in the living room or kitchen chatting and laughing. That part doesn't bother me, but whenever I pass by them or go into the house, I see them exchanging those strange looks. You know, the kind of sideways glances that make you feel like you're the punchline of a joke you're not part of. Many times, I've caught them looking at me and whispering something, as if I'm the topic of conversation. And when they make eye contact with me, they just give each other knowing smiles. It makes me uncomfortable, but I don't want to make a scene, so I stay quiet. After all, I'm there to take care of my granddaughter, not to worry about what 2 women in their 30s think of me. But it's not just the looks. There's a general vibe of judgment coming from them, as if I don't belong there. I'm in the living room playing with my granddaughter, and I hear whispers from the kitchen. Sometimes they stop talking altogether when I pass by, only to start again as soon as I'm out of earshot. They don't need to say anything for me to know they're talking about me. The atmosphere becomes heavy because of it. It bothers me, but I thought, whatever, they're just a couple of immature women gossiping. I'm a grown man, I don't need their validation. My job is to take care of my granddaughter, and I'm doing it well. But deep down, I can't shake the feeling that something isn't right. There's one more thing. My daughter-in-law never seems to appreciate the help I'm giving, at least not as much as I thought she would. But I keep doing it because I want to support my son and his family. I talked to my friends about this, and they brushed it off, saying I was just overthinking it. Why the hell would these 2 women be bothered with you? They've got plenty of other things to gossip about. I really don't know what to do in this situation. Am I really overthinking it? I've been researching this, and according to some websites, I could be suffering from some kind of disorder. I don't know, it's so lonely being an older man. I have no one who can understand me. I definitely can't confront my son about this, and my friends dismiss my concern. It's gotten to the point where I don't want to take care of my granddaughter anymore, and every time I see Bonnie, I just want to run away. Am I going crazy? Are my feelings real? Update 1. I was a little scared that people would call me crazy, but I'm grateful that many here told me I wasn't. The vibe is real, I'm telling you, because I overheard a conversation I wasn't supposed to hear, and that proved to me that you really should trust your instincts. Bonnie said something that hit me like a bucket of cold water. So, the day before yesterday, during a normal afternoon, my daughter-in-law came home from work with Bonnie. It was raining outside, so I was playing with my granddaughter in the living room. They walked past me, and as always, I felt that negative vibe emanating from their looks. Since I was in the living room, they sat there to talk. After a while, I went to the bathroom, and just at that moment, my granddaughter started crying. They didn't see me go to the bathroom. My daughter-in-law and her friend rushed out of the room to tend to her. Her friend said, "When did he leave?" My daughter-in-law replied, "No idea, how could he just leave the baby alone without telling us?" The bathroom is connected to the living room and I could hear every word clearly. Then Bonnie said, "That ugly bum has a bad attitude." I was frozen in place. Ugly bum, she was talking about me, no doubt. What really got to me wasn't just Bonnie's unpleasant comment. It was my daughter-in-law's reaction. She laughed like it was the funniest thing in the world. I stayed there for a moment, trying to process what I had just heard. I didn't know whether to confront them right then and there or let it go, like I had been doing for months. But something inside me snapped. I wasn't going to stand there and let them disrespect me like that, after everything I had done to help them. I couldn't keep hiding and enduring it anymore. I flushed the toilet and came out of the bathroom, and they both got nervous. I came out and asked, "What did you just say?" They both looked at me like deer caught in headlights. "Oh, we weren't talking about you," Bonnie said quickly with a fake smile on her face. My daughter-in-law just stared at me, silent. I said, "I wasn't born yesterday, I know exactly what I heard. If you have something to say it to my face instead of behind my back. I'm a military man, and I know how to take bullets to the chest." Bonnie rolled her eyes at my statement. My daughter-in-law remained silent. Bonnie repeated the same excuse, but this time she was irritated. "How many times do we have to tell you it wasn't about you? We were talking about our coworker." I said, "Well, then repeat the entire conversation and we'll see who you were really talking about." Bonnie gestured toward my daughter-in-law, and she intervened. "Let it go. Why are you making such a fuss about this? It wasn't about you." I ignored her and looked at Bonnie. I said, "I have a rough appearance because I've spent half my life serving and protecting my country, so people like you can sleep peacefully in their homes. And I'm not a bum either. I don't rely on my son and daughter-in-law's money. I earn my own living. I come here to help my family without asking for anything in return." My daughter-in-law asked me to stop scolding her friend because what I had overheard wasn't about me. "Forget it," I said, and I left their house. They didn't have the courage to admit what they had said, so to avoid more arguments, I defended myself and confronted them. That was enough. An hour later, my son showed up at my house, furious. His first sentence was, "You need to apologize to Bonnie." I said, "What? I have to apologize to Bonnie? Why? For defending myself?" He said that I had humiliated his guest. Apparently, his wife and her friend were talking about random things, and I was eavesdropping on their conversation. "Out of nowhere, you went off on them," he said. I asked him if he thought his father was crazy and would confront people without reason. I told him what I had overheard. I realized he wasn't interested in hearing my side of the story. He was more interested in having me apologize to Bonnie to save his reputation in his social circle. Apologize my foot. I said, "I don't give a damn what your wife or her friend do. I didn't disrespect anyone and I'm not going to apologize." He left my house furious. His attitude made my blood boil. How dare he come at me with his tantrums when I was the one who had been wronged by his wife's friend? That poor man has been so manipulated by his wife that he's lost his common sense. I swallowed my anger with a glass of malt whiskey and passed out. The next morning, yesterday, I got up at my usual time, did my routine, went to coach my students, and then to the park to relax. I saw that my phone was starting to fill with messages from my son, asking when I was going to take care of his daughter. I ignored them completely, let the calls go to voicemail, and went on with my day. I came back after my walk. I had lunch and was having a very pleasant afternoon nap when someone started ringing my doorbell insistently. I was expecting that visitor, yes, my son. I opened the door and he started ranting, "Where have you been since this morning? I've been calling and messaging you. I came here twice to find you. Where were you?" I was ready for this conversation. I asked him, "Why are you looking for me? Were you worried about me?" He got confused and said, "No, I mean yes. Why didn't you come to take care of the baby?" I smiled and replied, "That's why. I spent the day relaxing in the park." He started ranting again. "What? Seriously? You spent the whole day relaxing while I had to miss work and stay with the baby? I called you so many times, I even came here twice to drop off the baby, but you weren't here. How can you be so irresponsible?" I looked at him sternly, and he immediately stopped. "First of all, you have no right to question me. How much do you pay me to take care of the baby? Nothing. So you can't come here demanding anything from me. Second, I didn't go because I didn't want to." He interrupted, saying, "You could have let us know if you wanted to take a break." I laughed and said, "I don't work for you, so I don't have to tell you if I'm not going to show up. I did you a favor, and now I'm withdrawing it." He stayed quiet, and then realized I was probably upset about the incident from the previous night. What a loser. I said, "I'm not a bum. They can't defend the ugly part, and I definitely won't go back to that house where I'm disrespected." He realized he had messed up. He softened his tone, sat down, and said, "Dad, look, I'm sorry. If that's what you want, we need you. Bonnie might have said something out of line, but she's our guest, you know. If something bothered you, you could have told us later instead of confronting her at that moment." I said, "Let me get this straight. She insulted me, and your wife enjoyed it. She should have stopped her, but she didn't. I'm not a coward. I had to stand up for myself. Plus, you came here throwing a tantrum instead of apologizing. That was the last straw. This is where it all ends." We were still talking when his wife called him, yelling about his absence. He yelled back that he was cleaning up the mess Bonnie and she had created. Apparently, my daughter-in-law went to work, asking my son to take care of their daughter. He was working from home, expecting me to arrive. He thought I was just running late, but when I didn't show up, my son struggled to handle the baby and his work. His wife returned in the middle of the day, and they were both anxious because they had missed work. My son left saying, "I'm going to make that woman regret it and apologize to you." I said, "No apology will change anything." A few hours later, he showed up with his daughter. I knew it. He's not a man who can get his wife to apologize for her mistakes. I smiled and asked, "What happened to your wife?" He said, "She's working. She has to finish her work tasks. But I gave her the message that you're upset with her behavior and also with Bonnie's attitude. There's something else I need to tell you. Actually, Bonnie's grandparents and parents had some issues with the U.S. military, so she's not very fond of the military, you know. Plus, she sees you at home all the time, and that might have led certain thoughts to cross her mind, making her a bit sarcastic. But I'm sure my wife has nothing to do with Bonnie's comments. Note, Bonnie is an immigrant, and her family has some history with the U.S. military. I don't want to divulge that part because it seems ridiculous and like an excuse for her narcissism." I said, "What she said about me had nothing to do with my profession. It was pure malice and mockery. She commented on my appearance and the fact that I spend my days at your house, living off their mercy. Besides, I have no resentment towards Bonnie. She means nothing to me. But your wife, how could she laugh at such degrading comments?" He asked me to forget everything and return to taking care of his daughter since they couldn't afford a nanny. I felt a surge of anger rise inside me. I had been breaking my back for them for 8 months, and this is how they thanked me? Not only did my daughter-in-law allow her friend to disrespect me, but now my own son was brushing it off as if it were nothing. He didn't care about my feelings at all, only that I was a convenient solution to their childcare problems. Things escalated when I stood firm and said I wouldn't go back to caring for his daughter. As much as I love my granddaughter, I'm not going to sacrifice my self-esteem for love. I said, "I'm not a bum, I have my own life, and I'm done with your free labor. If your wife thinks I'm just there with nothing to do, then maybe you should start asking her to take care of the baby." My son tried to reason with me, but I wasn't willing to listen. I had had enough. I wasn't going to let them walk all over me anymore. I told him he'd have to manage on his own with his daughter's care from now on. I know I've put a barrier between my son and me, but I don't care. I need to stand up for myself. They crossed a line, and now they have to face the consequences. Update 2. A couple of months went by, and I hadn't heard from my son. I had essentially quit caring for their daughter, and as far as I know, they were struggling to find someone else to do it. I figured they'd have to pay for daycare or convince some acquaintance to help, but that was no longer my problem. Yesterday afternoon, I received an unexpected visit from my son. He came to my house looking disheveled, his eyes red, his clothes wrinkled, and with an overall expression of defeat on his face. I called him in, already sensing something bad was coming. He simply sat down and stared at the floor, clearly gathering the courage to say something. I casually asked, "What's wrong?" and he broke down crying, burying his face in his hands. Turns out Bonnie was a scammer. She convinced my daughter-in-law to invest in a scheme that supposedly would triple her money in a year, apparently involving a shell company. I didn't understand all the details, nor did I bother to look deeper into it. My daughter-in-law was so impressed with the scheme that she not only invested her savings, but also some of my son's money. And guess what happened to Bonnie after that? She disappeared as if she never existed. They filed a police report and even went to the cyber unit to trace the payment, but no luck. I was shocked to find out. I mean, Bonnie wasn't just some acquaintance my daughter-in-law had made at a mall or a hair salon. She was her co-worker, right? But yes, she didn't show up for work. Her house was empty, and when the police took details from the office and contacted her parents, it turned out to be a wrong number. I didn't know what to say. On one hand, I felt terrible for them. On the other, I couldn't stop thinking about all the times my son dismissed my concerns, defended Bonnie's behavior, and minimized my feelings. He chose her over me, and even asked me to apologize just to look good in front of her. My son broke down and asked for my help. He wanted me to start caring for his daughter again, and he also asked me for money to help them get out of this mess. I politely declined. I said, "I feel bad for you, but you brought this on yourself." Your wife chose to laugh and enjoy the degrading comments her friend made about me. She had fun when her friend insulted me. And you chose to side with your wife and her scammer friend, ignoring my feelings. So now you have to live with that decision. I can't help you anymore. He said he couldn't make ends meet, let alone afford a nanny. I responded, "And yet your wife's ego is so big that she didn't come here with you, even though you're in trouble, as you say." He asked me if his wife's apology would convince me to help them. I told him, "No, her apology means nothing to me, just like your tears mean nothing. I'm not going to be swayed by crocodile tears or a half-hearted apology and hand over my savings or my free service." He also hinted that I might eventually need their help since I'm getting older. I've already thought about that, but I know that if I were ever in a situation where I needed their help, they would never have stepped up. So, why should I do it? He tried to make me feel guilty, saying that I was turning my back on my granddaughter, who wasn't to blame for anything. I told him, if my granddaughter grows up to be a sensible person, she will respect me for standing up for myself. He left with a bitter expression. I know I will never be able to count on them, but not because I turned them down this time. In any case, they never would have supported me. So it's better that I save myself from being exploited. I will accept whatever God has planned for me in my old age. I'm not going to lose sleep over this. I am enjoying my life to the fullest. I have joined a school full-time to coach students, and I couldn't be happier with it. Update 3. Well, here I am again, and it seems that things have changed quite a bit since my last update. It has been hard being away from my granddaughter, but I've managed to move forward. And now I'm finally ready to tell you how things have been going. As I mentioned before, I stopped taking care of my granddaughter. The truth is, I don't regret it. It's been 5 months since I last spoke with my son, and although I sometimes miss my granddaughter, I believe I made the right decision. In all this time, my daughter-in-law hasn't even had the decency to swallow her pride and apologize. And even if she did now, I doubt it would change anything, because I know it wouldn't be sincere. She never wanted to have a relationship with me. She only saw me as free money that made her life easier. And what has happened with them? Well, I found out through some acquaintances that things haven't been easy for my son and his wife. Since I stopped taking care of their daughter, things have gotten quite complicated for them. It seems that my son had to quit his job to stay home and take care of the child because they couldn't afford to pay for daycare or someone else to do it. They had to cut expenses and move to a smaller place too, because with only one income, they couldn't maintain the house they were living in before. This got me thinking, why wasn't it my daughter-in-law who stayed home? The truth is, I don't know for sure, but I have 2 theories. The first is that she probably made more money than my son, so from a practical standpoint, it made more sense for him to quit his job. The second theory, and honestly the one I find more likely, is that she simply isn't very interested in spending time with her daughter. I had already noticed this when I was still the babysitter. As soon as she got home, she didn't care about the child. She would go out with her friends or do her own thing. I wouldn't be surprised if she didn't want to stay home to take care of her own daughter. It also hasn't helped that they lost all or most of their savings because of Bonnie. But if instead of attacking me, they had seen the signs that Bonnie was a horrible person, they probably would have saved themselves all these problems and wouldn't be in this mess today. And although I do miss my granddaughter, I've come to the conclusion that when she grows up, maybe we can reconnect. If she has a bit of common sense, I hope she understands my position and respects the fact that I stood up for myself when I was disrespected. It hurts, yes, but I can't be around her parents' toxicity. Maybe one day when she's older, and if she hasn't been influenced by her mother's opinions, we can build a different relationship. But right now, that's not something that keeps me up at night. Speaking of how my life is going, I'll tell you that I'm greatly enjoying my time coaching kids full-time on the baseball team. This has been a huge change for me, and it fills me with satisfaction. I've always liked serving, as I did during my years in the military. And now, Coaching these kids gives me a sense of purpose that I hadn't felt in a long time. These boys don't care about my appearance or judge me for looking rough or like a bum, as they called me before. In fact, they love my background. They always ask me to tell them stories from my time in the service. Of course, I can't share all the details, but they love hearing about how I got some of my scars, and those stories are very popular with them. It's funny because what's a reason for mockery for some is a source of respect and admiration for these boys. They see me as a mentor, and I'm glad to be able to share some of my experience with them. At the end of the day, being with these boys gives me more than what I lost when I distanced myself from my son and his family. I feel valued and respected, something I didn't feel at home during the last months I spent taking care of my granddaughter. Now, I've continued hearing things about what's going on with my son and daughter-in-law, and here's the interesting part. It turns out that all this financial downfall and chaos they're in now wasn't just because I stopped being their babysitter. So here I am, coaching kids, enjoying my life, and doing what I love. I don't need validation from my son or his wife. I've learned to appreciate what I have, and now I surround myself with people who respect and value what I bring.